All right. So now to finish talking about hypothermic emergencies, or hypo, remember, means under or below. Therm means heat. Ay, madre. All right. So hypothermia, low body temperature. And there's really two types of hypothermia. We have generalized hypothermia, which is what we were talking about when you're out in the open, freezing. By the way, I just went to the gas station wearing shorts and my slippers. I got a t-shirt, but I kind of got a thermal shirt underneath that. It was comfortable outside. I loved it. The only reason I came back in is because I had to start class. I am crazy. I've been outside in this snow. No, it wasn't snowing yet, but it snowed the next day. It was 10-degree weather. Now I was outside smoking a cigarette in shorts and a t-shirt and barefoot. Now I only smoked one cigarette. I was cold, but that's about the coldest I've been in shorts and a t-shirt. So what happens when you upset your fiance and she kicks you out of bed? Anyway, so generalized hypothermia is that general all over body temperature. Now there's also localized cold emergency, and that's what we call frostbite. So remember that generalized, it's affecting the whole body, it's slowing body processes, mentation, nerve impulses, the muscles become stiff, balance starts getting off. With hypothermia, or I'm sorry, with frostbite, the localized hypothermia, now we start getting different parts. I don't want to say freezing up, but in the way they are. And the common areas, and this is where they'll kind of test you on it. The common areas are like the nose, the cheeks, but also the fingers and the toes. Hands, you can kind of include hands and feet. Okay, but fingers and toes, nose and cheek. The nose and cheek, obvious reasons. They're probably exposed to the cold. A good example to kind of think about what's happening in frostbite, although it's not frostbite unless you keep it dipped in for a long period of time. And I know nobody's done this, right, Steve? Yeah, you're at a party and you have a big old bucket. And you put ice in there, right? And you got the beers in there. And after a while, that ice melts. Well, you still got that cold darn water. And so you're trying to find the kind of beer you want. Actually, let's make it PG. The kind of soda. Wait, soda. And you're in there searching, you're trying to grab something. What happens to your hand and your arm that's dunked into that cold water?
Starts to burn.
Yeah, it starts to burn, it starts to hurt, huh? Because what do you think is getting affected? The nerves. The nerves are screaming at you because it's so cold. And then you bring it out, and because Gabe is a smart aleck, right? A little clown. he goes up to Hannah and puts his cold hand on her face. And Hannah winds back and slugs him in the face, right? It's like, how you like that? No, Hannah, you're nice. You're not going to slug him. He's nice.
I've had it done to me before, so like, I usually don't.
No, but it's Gabe, your class leader. So, but anyway, so think about that. And you stay in the cold. Isn't your arm going to freeze up? Freeze up, so to speak? Yeah. And it hardens and it hardens, because eventually becomes solid. Remember the ice cube? So one reason you don't rub the body part is because you could snap it off. Have you ever snapped off an icicle? Well, what do you think the finger has become? Or the toe? So never rub a frozen part or a cold part to warm it up. Now, it loses circulation, so it becomes blue. Severe enough, blisters develop. Don't ever pop those blisters. From frostbite, from burns, never pop the blisters. Okay. What else? Oh, why the fingers and toes, especially if you have gloves and shoes on?
Because they're the furthest away from my heart.
No. I mean, that's true, but that's not the reason why. Steve had mentioned it earlier. I think it was Steve.
They got less fat.
Nope. Have you seen some people have sausage fingers? I'm not going to mention toes. I'm not a toe person. I'm not a foot person. Because, remember somebody said, it expands. What's 70% of our makeup? Water. Water. So, doesn't water expand when it gets frozen? Yeah. And so what do you think is happening to the fingers and toes? They're expanding. And are they getting compressed? Yeah. And so is warm blood circulating to the fingers and toes? So are they going to be susceptible to frostbite? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so earlier we were talking about cold water submersion. So now we're going to get into the treatments. Like I said, with cold water submersion, we want to make sure that we warm them up. And we'll talk a little bit more about drownings when we get to submersion injuries. Again, warm them up, work them. Be careful how you handle them. Don't handle them roughly. This will also apply to hypothermia, but we'll get a little bit more, with frostbite, localized hypothermia. But it starts off the same. Whenever you have a hypothermic patient, you want to remove any cold, wet clothing And that does also mean underwear. Because if you leave the underwear on, isn't that still cold and wet? Possibility, if it was cold water submersion. And are you really helping them to warm? Are you helping to warm them up? No. So really, the first thing you do is you make sure you have the heater on in the back. It's on. It's nice and toasty. You remove any cold, wet clothing. You cover them up with blankets. Also, with generalized hypothermia all over the body, you want to use hot packs. Don't be getting towels wet with hot water. That's really hot water. Heat packs go up to about 105 degrees. And where you place them, and this is important for you guys to remember, so everybody pay attention. You want to put the hot packs in the neck, on either side of the carotid arteries, under the armpits, and in the groin. So where do they go, Sharon?
Can you repeat that? My kids were screaming, so I didn't hear
No
where you're
problem.
supposed to put them.
Because this is important. You might see this in the future. In the neck, or either side on the carotid arteries, either side of the neck, under the armpits, and on either side of the groin. One more time. Either side of the neck, the armpits, and on either side of the groin. The reason being is there are major arteries there. Brachial, carotid, and femoral. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to send warm blood to those parts of the body. You're trying to warm up the core. And here's the yucky thing. The most accurate body temperature you can get for a cold emergency is by obtaining a rectal temperature, because that's detecting the core. The mouth is not going to do it. The armpit's not going to do it. The most accurate temperature you can get in a cold emergency is a rectal temperature. And just so you know, the red tip thermometers are the ones that are used for rectal temperatures. Don't be putting a red tip thermometer in the mouth. Just making sure. Unless that's the only thing it's used for. They have a blue tip thermometer, but they only use it for rectal temperatures, okay. So, rectal temperature. If you have localized cold emergency, in other words, frostbite, we put it, no, never mind. Again, you want to remove any cold constrictive clothing, wet clothing, throw wet in there, but why not? But it's usually could be cold constrictive clothing, because we want to improve circulation. We want to put the water, or we want to put the object in some hot water. Again, you don't want to exceed 105 degrees. You don't rub the area, because we don't want to break anything off. Now, anybody see the movie Mr. Deeds with Adam Sandler?
Yes,
Remember
sir.
the leg?
The Blackfoot.
The Blackfoot? That is such BS, because that black is necrotized tissue. Worse than gangrene. Well, gangrene is kind of necrotized tissue. It's dead tissue. So they should have chopped that thing off. But for the movie, obviously, they didn't. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. Oh, does she need down? I think she wants me to put her in my lap. Baby. Ow. Ow. All right. Got my dog in my lap. All right. Yeah, if it's something like that, they're gonna have to chop the limb off. Okay. And again, don't pop any blisters. So. All right. Any questions on cold emergencies? So what's important to remember is think about what's happening with the cold. Think about those ice cubes. Think about that ribeye. Think about what's happening to that tissue as it's getting colder. Okay. Think about the water being cold. Again, it's going to preserve, but it's also dropping very quickly depending on the temperature of that water. So, all right. Any questions on cold emergencies? All right. Now, let's reverse the temperature and it starts going up. So the body, again, trying to take care of itself, is going to try and cool itself off. And we know we start to perspire. The body's cooling mechanism is working. If we're perspiring, the mechanism is working. If the body temperature, when you feel it, is cool, it's working. We want to make sure that that's what's going on. All right. Now, have you ever been outside working out, exercising, working in the hot sun, and you're just sweating bullets? You lost like 5 pounds. Hey, Susan Gabe, how fun is it fighting a fire out on a really hot day?
It's not.
It's the best.
Yeah, for you it is.
The cramps get you. That's when you know you're screwed.
Yeah, remember the difference between Jesus and Gabe. Jesus is a wildland firefighter. So he wears a fire retardant shirt. Do you wear green pants?
Yeah.
And fire retardant pants. Not like the structural firefighting, where that stuff is heavy. And I think even El Paso fights wildland fires in structural gear, don't they?
Yep.
Yep. That is crazy to me, because I had a separate set of brush gear with my web gear and I had structure boots. I'm sorry, station boots and wildland boots. I didn't have whites. I had Hawthorns, which are made by White. So they're awesome boots. I gotta find my Hawthorns. I love those boots.
They're expensive.
Yep.
Yeah,
They're worth it, aren't they?
we're allowed to buy
Oh, yeah.
wildland stuff, but that's why we don't, because it's expensive as hell.
You know what? It makes work a lot easier.
It
Turn
just
up here,
does-
especially if you're humping hose up a hill. Oh no. Especially with those cleaning. Do you use cleaning packs, Jesus?
Yeah.
2 sticks or 3?
We used 2.
2? Okay.
El Paso just doesn't give them enough. I think the biggest brush fires we have are maybe 20 acres at tops. They're normally out quick.
Yeah, because sand doesn't burn very well unless it's like a nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the reason I'm talking about the gear is, again, what Jesus wears is lighter and it's breathable. Whereas what Gabe wears, as he said, he hates it because it's heavy. That gear is meant to keep you warm, to protect you. There's layers that provide I kind of want to call it a cushion of air, but there's air layers that prevents all that heat from coming in. Because when we go into a burning building, that temperature in that room can exceed 800 degrees Fahrenheit. What do you do if you put a turkey in an oven at 800 degrees? First off, your oven doesn't go that high. Two, do you think that turkey's going to be pretty well cooked? Literally and figuratively, us turkeys. That's what I loved about being a captain. I could still go in with my crew. But a lot of times I was outside. It's meant to protect you from that heat. But remember, our body's trying to release that heat, right? And so we sweat. Well, guess what? If you ever look at turnouts, look at the inner layer. It sucks. And when you get it wet, it's even heavier. Okay? So lose a lot of salt, a lot of sodium, because you find sodium in sweat. Now let's go back to what I was saying initially. So have you been out there working, especially a dark shirt, and you're done and you look at your shirt and there's white rings on your shirt? Have you ever seen that? Experienced that? Yeah. A couple of you have. What are those white rings?
Salt buildup.
It's salt. It's salt. Well, everybody's heard the story of how Gatorade was made. You haven't, Steve? Gatorade comes from the Florida Gators. Gatorade. And so their football team, because of their two-a-days in the summer, in the humid summer of Florida, they'd be outside working out. Well, what would happen to them? They would get really dehydrated. What happens when you sweat, you lose electrolytes. And so what they did was they came out with this drink for the football players, for the Miami Gators, that would help them. I'm sorry, not Miami Gators, Florida Gators. That would help them replenish those electrolytes that they lost during exercises, during their training camps. Thus, they came out with Gatorade. It contains electrolytes, including sodium. Because if you lose sodium, you're losing the ability for muscles to contract, but they're actually cramping up as well. Now, you could also put some salt into a glass of water, but do you want salty water? No, you like a little flavoring, right? So the only thing bad I have to say about Gatorade is that it has a lot of sugar. And so people say, no, it's not true where kids get a sugar rush. Well, ask a firefighter. They get that sugar rush and they drop. So Gatorade is good for the electrolytes, but it's too much sugar. So, Jesus, what do you guys have a rule for Gatorade and water?
We carry some little powders called drip drops.
Uh-huh.
We really don't. There's like little packets.
Less sugar?
It's got some sugar, but not as much as a Gatorade for sure.
Yeah. No, we had a rule in base camps we worked at. It had rules that it should be one Gatorade for every, one bottle of water for every bottle of Gatorade.
With us, it's 1 bottle of Gatorade, 2 bottles of water.
See, too much sugar. So for your kids, you can give them Gatorade. Just remember the sugar content. Powerade is a little bit better. But really, if your kids are dehydrated, Pedialyte. Tastes horrible, but Pedialyte. Or if you're Mexican, Suero. And I've seen them at Walmart, bottles of Sweato. To me, Sweato is an IV, but hey, who am I? Pedialyte works. And there's another one I used to use. It's an electrolyte drink also. But it's not called Pedialyte. Maybe electrolyte? Something like that. It's there with the others, with Sweato and Pedialyte as well. So that helps out also. It doesn't have too much sugar. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is there's 3 heat emergencies. Now understand that just because they have one, they're not going to get the others. They might have 2 out of the 3. They might not have all 3. Or they might have all 3 if they don't take care of themselves. Okay? Those salt rings, those cramps. The first heat emergency happens exactly what I told you. From excessive sweating, losing salt, they develop cramps. And so the first heat emergency is called which one is it? Heat cramps. Heat cramps. Okay. Not a big deal. Like I said, give them some electrolyte replacement. That should take care of it. All right. So again, they might not have heat cramps before they go into the next one. So you're outside working out, exercising, whatever it is. Your body's still working. The cooling mechanism is still going pretty good. You're sweating, your skin is cool because you're letting air out and the wind is cooling you down. Perfect. And tell me if anybody's experienced this. You got a headache. Maybe you're a little out of it. All right. Maybe sweating a little bit more. So remember that the blood vessels open up a little, they dilate, vasodilation. But temperature's going up a little bit. Still working, the body's still working, but it's starting to work a little bit more. So a headache, dizziness, a little bit more sweaty. And that's what we call what? What's the next heat emergency?
Is it heat exhaustion?
Yes, it is. Heat exhaustion, the way to differentiate heat exhaustion is that the body temperature is cool. When you touch it, it's cool and it's sweaty because it's still working. All right. Now, had a call one day. We were watching football. Our fire chief comes over. This is a Sunday. He'd get out of the house. He lived away from our community. So he rented a house there in town or an apartment. And sometimes when he was tired of being around his wife, he'd go in on the weekends and hang out over there to be away from the wife. I can't imagine that. Anyway, so he comes over to the station and he starts watching football with us. And we get a call. Get toned out for a vehicle off the roadway. They wanted us to go check to see what was up. We'd gone off the roadway, stuck in the dirt berm. And as we're leaving the chief, or no, I think either when we were leaving or when we got there, he's like, yeah, I saw this car earlier. I should have stopped, but I didn't think about it. Okay. So I go up to him. I'm the captain, but they kind of had me go do the assessment. Not a big deal. And they just said, yeah, this car's been here a while. Somebody called it in. We came to check. We found somebody in the car. Can you go assess her? Not a problem. The vehicle is an old ice cream truck. Like maybe about the way that the new UPS trucks are. But not as big as the old ones. Remember? You notice how the UPS trucks are smaller? So it's one of those, but it's an older model. I don't think that AC worked very well. Driving with her driver's side door open. Mind you, this is the summer, and this is in the low desert of Southern California. So I can tell you what it feels like to battle a structure fire and being full turnouts, and it's 115 degrees outside. I can tell you, and let me tell you, it's not fun. Anyway, so I reach over for her leg to see if I get a reaction. I touch her leg, and her leg is hot. What does that indicate?
The cooling system's not working correctly anymore.
Exactly. The body's cooling mechanism is no longer working. Remember I told you with heat exhaustion, the cooling mechanism is still working, so the skin is cool? Here it's not. So the skin becomes hot. And now the body is no longer able to keep up with the cooling, and so the internal temperature begins to rise. Well, what happens to food when you put it in the microwave or an oven, and the internal temperature starts to rise?
Cooks.
It cooks. And it cooks the brain. Cooks the brain. And so then I tried tugging on her leg. And what do you think happened when I tugged that leg? And there's a reason why I told you about the temperature.
Did she fall apart?
Nope. Come on, guys. Haven't you ever heard of rigor mortis? Heat, and that's why I mentioned the temperature, heat speeds up rigor mortis. It occurs a lot quicker than it does in a normal temperature. I couldn't move her leg because rigor mortis had set in. She was slumped over to the side. So I pronounced her right then and there. She was, out here we call it DOS, dead on scene. Anyway, the takeaway from heat stroke is that the body's cooling mechanism is no longer working and the skin is hot. That's the key. We used to say that also the skin's going to be dry, but guess what? That's not the case anymore. About 50% of them could be moist, 50% of them could be dry. So don't go by the skin moisture. Go by the skin temperature. If it's hot to the touch, it's heat stroke. Remember, the body's cooking from the inside. And so what you really want to take care of or be aware of is that they can have seizures. They could be altered. They could be unconscious. They're confused. Poor coordination. The body is cooking from the inside.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So last summer, my husband was hospitalized because he worked in the heat and he passed out, and the doctor said that he had low kidney function, like he was really sick from it. And when I asked it, so is this a heat stroke? They were like, no, this is more like heat exhaustion. But when he had
No.
passed out, that's what I'm thinking, because when he had passed out, like they said it almost looked like he was like convulsing.
It's a condition, and wildland firefighters really got to be cognizant of this. It's called rhabdomyolysis, or we just call it rhabdo. So it is from a heat emergency, but what starts happening in rhabdo is you have a breakdown of the muscle fibers, and it releases chemicals which can affect the kidneys, mentation, and people can die from rhabdomyolysis. So look it up. Look it up, and it'll be like, that's what it was.
Yeah, I figured it was something, because I'm like, this seems a lot more extreme
Yeah,
than
it is.
heat exhaustion.
It is. People that are typically working outside can suffer from rhabdomyolysis, especially wildland firefighters. I can tell you, and Jesus can tell you, man, it's wrong to go on like 3-mile hikes, 5-mile hikes.
Yeah, that sounds like rhabdo for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you started telling me, as soon as you mentioned the kidney, it's like, oh, rhabdo. Soldiers can get it too. Athletes, but professional athletes, they try to take care of them a lot better than that. And especially after Corey Stringer died, he was a football player with the Minnesota Vikings. Um, they give him a lot more water breaks. Before I left San Diego, there was a case where two, and actually I think they were inmate firefighters. They died from rhabdo. They were hospitalized and ended up dying from rhabdo. All right. Now we talked about the treatment for heat cramps. As far as heat exhaustion and heat stroke, first thing you do is you want to make sure you have the back of the ambulance cooled down with the AC. If you can't get them to the ambulance yet, make sure you take them to a nice cool environment. If you happen to be working in an event or some facility, if you have an extra room, keep that room dark, because the lights will warm up the room. So if you keep the lights off, door closed, it's going to be a lot cooler. You want to provide a cool environment so the body gets acclimated to that, remember? So bringing the body temperature down. You want to remove any constrictive clothing. You want the body to be able to breathe, to dissipate that heat. So you loosen or remove any constrictive clothing. And this time, guys, sorry, you don't remove any bras or underwear, underpants. You can remove shoes, socks. Give them something cool to drink for heat exhaustion. For a heat stroke, nothing by mouth. Number one. Number two, I brushes the guys. Number two is, remember we used hot packs with cold emergencies? This time we're going to use cold packs, the exact same places. Where were those places? The neck.
Either side, the armpits, and in the groin area.
Uh-huh. So ice packs down there. All right. Now, one of the things I'm going to tell you, and believe me, it sucks, because I've experienced this a lot. Remember I was telling you about how elderly patients lose body fat? So if you have the AC on, what do you think they're going to be? They're going to be cold. You're comfortable because it's freaking 100 degrees outside, and inside that bus, that truck, it's like 110 with the AC off. All right? So you want that air conditioning on. You're nice and comfortable, right? And so what do you think grandma says? I'm cold. And you're thinking to yourself, are you nuts? It's hot in here. But of course, we don't say that. We're nice to our patients. So what do?
Turn it off.
We turn it off. It doesn't dawn on them that you've just lost 5 pounds in sweat or liquid because you just sweated that off, and there's a big puddle around the gurney. And you usually don't have the blankets accessible because it's summer, right? And a sheet ain't gonna cut it. So just remember that, okay? And so when it's cold, their body might take a little bit longer to warm up. Okay, because remember those nerve impulses are slowed down. So it takes a while for them to get to the brain and the brain to decipher and say, okay, I'm cold. All right. All right, questions on heat emergencies. That extreme close up there, Ernesto. No questions on heat emergencies? Is it, sorry, Precious. Is it helping you visualize these emergencies? And so there's certain things you're going to see. If you look at everything that the book talks about, we just kind of condensed it into a lot smaller. That's why I want you to use your imaginations. Put your thinking caps on. Okay? All right. You ready for the next part? Something I really, really hate. That's why I hate dead snakes. Don't you, Jesus? Did you ever do those?
Burned up once.
Oh, we had to do them frequently in the fire academy. I hated those, especially when the instructors tried to get us to dip them down to the ground. Because if they succeeded, then we had to drop and do like 20 push-ups. It sucked. Dead snakes is where they put water in a stick, a length of hose, and they cap off either end. And so then you go hiking with those with that hose on your shoulder. And these sticks are 50 feet. Wildland, no, they didn't use wildland because wildland are 100 feet sticks. That's what we call a length of hose, is a stick. Structure hose is 50 feet a stick, and wildland is 100. Right? It's been a while.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, 50 feet, double jacket, cotton, sucks. Anyway, so I hate those, but maybe not as much as snakes themselves. Here's my big thing about snakes. Out there in YouTube world, sorry for my language. Don't fuck with snakes. It's real simple. You don't fuck with a snake, you don't get bit by a snake. Okay? I don't see how that's very difficult. Don't go petting it. Don't go putting its tail in your mouth. Remember that rattlesnake world on Animal Planet? How stupid can you be? How many times did that dude get bit? I think he finally died, if I remember correctly. I wonder how he died. Spoken sarcastically. A snake bite. Other than not messing with snakes, you'll see some things, characteristics of the signs and symptoms. But really, the effects on the body, just like we did with poisonings, the effects on the body are going to be dependent on the species of the snake. Now, out here, obviously, being in the desert, there's rattlesnakes. I hated going on snake removals for when I was on fire department. I remember my first one. I was like, I was a probie, so I had no choice. They're like, Lou, get this big shovel and just block it off so it doesn't get away from us. Like, no. Yep. So there I am. I'm like standing like 5 feet away from the shovel. I'm just holding it by the tips of my fingers. And my feet are like far away so I could drop it and run. Once I promote it up, it's like, I'll just be over here by the engine. If you guys need help, just holler. What a captain, huh? Mama didn't raise no fool. I don't mess with snakes. Rattlesnakes cause pain, cause swelling, and most other snake bites do too. It's what it does on the inside that is going to determine what else happens. There are some poisons that will cause bleeding internally. There's others that are neurotoxins. They affect the nerves, eventually affecting the brain. So there's different things.
You can get that from certain spider bites too here.
Yeah.
The brown recluse.
Oh, we'll talk about brown recluse and black widow. Now, it's been way too long. Like I said, it's been over 20 years. I had to memorize the signs symptoms of brown recluse and the black widow spider bite because one of the exams we got in the pre-course to get into the program was going to include either black widow spider or brown recluse. And he alternated between the two. So I learned both. But now it's like, okay, I remember, but it's like, I don't like spiders either. Anything creepy crawly, Lou don't do. Lou don't do that. Or Lou don't play that. Like in Living Color, if you guys remember that show, homie don't play that, smack. All right? Well, Lou don't do that, smack. You get bit, you got bit because you're stupid. I'm just kidding. But just be very careful of poisonous creatures. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me working at the San Diego Zoo. Anyway, before I talk about being able to identify snakes, we don't need to take it with us. Taking a picture is fine. I don't want, and I'm sure your partner doesn't want, a loose snake in the back or even a loose snake in the front. We don't need to take that damn thing with us, okay? You can tell a rattlesnake, it has a rattle. Even a poison spider or scorpions, that's another one. Oh my gosh. Remember, anything creepy crawly, I mean, my skin is crawling right now just thinking about it. I can't even touch a page that has one of those creepy crawlies, a snake or a spider. I like grab it from like the very tip where there's no picture on it. I that's like one of my biggest fears. And that's where this story kind of comes into play. Anyway, just know, like the pit vipers, remember the poisonous spiders tend to have a triangular head, whereas the non-poisonous spiders tend to have a rounded head. And also the eyeballs. Poisonous spiders tend to have slits, where the poisonous spiders have rounded eyes. And then there's another saying, I can never remember it because I don't like messing with snakes. Red and yellow, it's mellow. Something like that. And red and something. Anybody know that saying about snakes? See if I can see something here. No. Okay. If a person gets bit by a snake, you want to look for there's Charlie. Hey, buddy, I haven't seen you in a long time. Man, you got more hair. I could tell the difference. He has some sticking up in the back of his head, or right on the top of his head. He's getting that alfalfa thing going. You're still Charlie, buddy. Oh yeah, I love that onesie with the baseball. If you have a patient bitten by a snake, look for the fangs. Because I've been on calls where somebody swears they got bit, and you look at where they're saying they got bit, you don't see any bite marks. Now, usually the poisonous snakes have fangs. So there'll be two dots on them, 2 puncture wounds. If they have like rows of teeth, those aren't poisonous. Okay. Now, Komodo dragon is a whole other story. Their saliva is poisonous, and they don't have fangs, but they have rows of teeth. But I think if you have a big ass lizard coming at you, you'll know it's a Komodo dragon. The other thing too is you might see redness. So what you want to do is you want to draw a circle around that redness. So you'll have the fangs, and then you'll see the redness. So you draw a circle, and carry a Sharpie with you guys in your pocket. Maybe up here, or clip it to your shirt. Sharpies do come in handy, so invest in a Sharpie. What that's doing is when you get that patient to the hospital, they could see the spread. Now, before I talk about anti-venin, the correct term is venin, anti-venin, not anti-venom. It's anti-venin, V-E-N-I-N. True or false? Baby rattlesnake bites are worse than adult rattlesnake bites.
True.
That's true.
True.
Did anybody watch that show on Animal Planet years ago, where it had this rattlesnake doctor out of Loma Linda University in Loma Linda, California? He's a world-renowned expert on rattlesnake bites and rattlesnakes. But rattlesnake bites, he's a doctor. It is not true that baby rattlesnake bites are worse than adult rattlesnake bites. They say that baby rattlesnakes don't know how to control what they inject. However, the potency of their venom, which is true, they can't regulate how much they inject, but the thing is, the potency of their venom is very low. So it is a false statement. Now, the other thing too is, if you cut off the head of a snake, don't be messing with that head. Charlie didn't like the conversation? Guy after my own heart. Yeah, I don't do snakes. I hate talking about snake bites, believe me. With rattlesnake bites, they could still occur even if the head's separated from the body. Okay? So you want to bury that head if you've done it. Before I became chief, our department policy was to relocate the snakes. After I became chief, our department policy became, I'll just call it euthanasia. That's how much I hate snakes. And some places do, some places don't. Okay.
I'm gonna get you a snake for Christmas then.
Oh, that's just wrong. That's just wrong.
Dude, the proper way to
I'll
say it
just
is
leave it in your office.
Good thing I don't work out of my office.
You're there in the mornings though.
No, I'm at home all day long.
I'll feed it for you.
You'll feed it for me?
Yeah.
What kind of snake are you going to give me, Clarissa?
I don't know, any type of snake. You said your first snakes. You didn't say which kind.
The biggest one.
Like a python?
That's too big.
A little grass snake?
Yeah, I'll get you a little snake.
No. I'll be happy with a video game. I'm going to tell you the treatment for rattlesnake bites, and then I'll tell you my story. So we talked about the circle. You want to put a constrictive band around the above the site. You're trying to slow the spread of the venom to the core. And you want to keep it below the level of the heart, because you put it above the level, you're helping gravity. So you want to keep it low and put a constricting band, not a tourniquet.
Lou,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was going to ask.
About why below?
No, I was going to ask if a tourniquet would work.
It could if you don't tighten it up too much.
I was gonna say, if you use a tourniquet, they'll more than likely lose the limb.
Well, that's if you tighten it all the way, like you do when you apply a normal tourniquet. You can apply a tourniquet, but don't make it too tight. Maybe just like cinching it down, that should be enough, without having to turn the windlass. You get bandana, wrap it around. A tie. You just don't want to apply tourniquet-like pressure. The other thing you don't want to do is put ice on the wound. Ice makes the poison worse. The one good thing, just like with other things we talked about, the species, the type of venom, and then the person. Obviously, a little kid get bitten by a rattlesnake or a poisonous snake is going to have a worse effect than a grown-up. So. All right, so the other treatment for, and it's more common for rattlesnake bites, is the anti-venom. Out here they have them, areas that have a lot of rattlesnakes tend to carry the anti-venom. Here's another reason why you don't mess with snakes. Now, back at the early part of the century, seems like so long ago. Sounds weird. It used to be $1,500 a dose. If you think about inflation and the cost of things nowadays, it's probably closer to $5,000, $3,000 to $5,000 a dose. Safe estimate. Do you know how many doses it takes for a normal rattlesnake bite?
Isn't it like 5?
Nope. Higher. Man, you guys are no fun at
20?
game shows.
Give
I
us
bet
a
you if I offered you like $100 gift,
25.
I see how you guys are. You just want my money. But yeah, that's actually the number, 25 doses. Let's say conservatively $3,000 a dose. That's what, 75,000 bucks. So you want to mess with snakes? You got 75,000 bucks lying around? Now, maybe insurance will cover it, maybe not. But you want to try? So not very fun, is it? All right, you guys ready for my story? So you know how much I love reptiles, right? Or creepy crawly things. Like I said, I used to work at the San Diego Zoo. Anybody ever been to the San Diego Zoo?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you ever been to the reptile house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's in that reptile house?
Not reptiles.
Yeah, there are.
That was rhetorical.
Smart Alec. What kind of reptiles do they have in there, Gabe?
Isn't it kind of one of everything
Everything of what?
that can kill you?
Do they have rattlesnakes? Different types of rattlesnakes?
Yes, sir.
Diamondbacks and
Yeah, copperheads, all those.
uh-huh. Do they have cobras?
Mm-hmm.
A king cobra?
I don't remember specifics. It's been like 4 or 5 years, but I know they had a pretty. I think it was like almost 50 different kinds or something like that.
Mm-hmm. They had cobras and king cobras. They had a green mamba. I think they had a black mamba and not Kobe. Although, what's his name? LeBron James went there one time before he got married. I remember hearing on the radio, got a VIP. So anyway, and they got other poisonous creatures, a lot of creepy crawly things, scorpions, and I think they even had a Komodo dragon in there. They had an anaconda. So
I remember the
all
Komodo
stuff that
dragon
I'm
was
like,
cool.
huh?
The Komodo dragon was cool. You got to see it eat.
Mhm. The worst part was when I worked at the Wild Animal Park. They took us on a tour backstage of a reptile area. It wasn't a reptile house, but it was called something else. And they showed us the poisonous ones with the red dots. And they said, if you happen to get called back here for one of my employees who got bit, This will tell you what you could do. I'm thinking, no, I'm not. You're not gonna find me back here. Anyway, and before I got off the shift, I made it a habit. I'd drive around just to look at the animals. And I'd also walk around the reptile house. Now, mind you, I'd be like 5 feet away from the glass. I don't know if they're gonna break the glass. I don't trust those things. So my biggest fear always was one of those escaping. Big fear of working because at the San Diego Zoo, they call it health services. The first aid station is right next to the reptile house. It's kind of hidden, but it's there. It's also where nursing mothers can go and nurse their babies. Or if they need a pump, they can go there and we give them some privacy and they do that. Anyway, one night, it's getting close for me to get off. And I'm sitting there and it's kind of, it is an L-shaped desk. And so there's a glass right here to my right. And so I'm looking straight ahead and I'm typing away or I'm looking at something on the computer. Now, the corner of my eye, I saw something pop up. And my eyes kind of like, what was that? And so I look and I don't see anything there. And so I look back and just a short time later, I see it again. And I look over and I see a triangular beak or bottom of the mouth. My heart stopped. I think I dirtied my underpants. My biggest fear coming true. And I'm looking. And next thing I see is like 3 little claw fingers. And I look and I realized what it was. It was a run-of-the-mill lizard. It wasn't from the reptile house. They had lizards around there. Nonetheless, it scared the living daylights out of me. That's how afraid I am of reptiles. Quit it, Clarissa. I see the squirrels working inside there. Yeah, she's trying to fix her halo. Who, me? Never.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, Miss Clarissa.
What the heck did I do?
No, I'm just saying that you're thinking about how to reward me.
Oh, with your new pet snake. Oh, okay, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you back in your office?
Never. I work out of my house now.
Liar, I'm gonna call Michelle then.
You do that, she'll tell you I work from home. She never knows when I'm going in or when I'm leaving. I was in there today and I left before I talked to her.
But I could just ask her, like, hey, can you tell Lou to go to his office today? Because there's a surprise for him. But you're not gonna know it's for me.
When she tells me that, hey, can you come in for something? I'll be like, no. I told her to go in there first.
Liar. You wouldn't even know though. Like, she's not gonna tell you.
Well, all I have to do is just give her a heads up.
Anyways, back to teaching. Because I feel rude. Not even part of this class. But question, how many more hours do I owe?
I don't know.
Nicole said like my shifts, my clinicals, when I don't get calls, count for hours.
Okay.
So I had 2 12-hour shifts with no calls. So does that count?
I don't know. We can talk about it later.
Fine.
Because I don't know. That involves more work on my end. All right. Bites and stinks. there's a lot of different creatures that will bite and will sting. We've talked about bee stings. They sting you and they inject their poison. Uh, Now, that's a sting. We talked about mosquitoes, but when we're dealing with like bee stings, how do we remove the stinger if it's still present?
I've always seen Mexicans try to pop it out like a pimple
Why do you have to be racist?
because I'm Mexican and that's how my tias have done it.
Use a credit card.
Remember that the poison sac is still attached to the stinger. So, in a way, I could see why, like trying to pop it with a pimple, you're staying away from the stinger at the tip. So, like grabbing it with pinzas, not a good idea. Tweezers. Really, the suggested method is to scrape it away with a soft or with a hard edge, like a credit card edge. Remember that bee stings can cause allergic reactions. It's going to be painful initially. First time they're stung, they might get a localized reaction. It'll hurt. After that, they can suffer from anaphylactic reactions. Hornets, they really hurt. I haven't heard a lot of people get allergic reactions or anaphylactic reactions from hornet stings. So, good news and bad news about brown recluse. Good news. You don't find them all over the country. Bad news. They're common in the southwestern part of the United States. Wait, what part of the United States do we live in? Exactly. Hannah right away is like, yeah, no.
My dad's been bitten by one.
Ooh.
And a black widow.
Black widow or brown recluse?
Both.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Was he okay after the brown recluse?
Yeah, he was alright. He actually just got his finger. So they were
Did
able
the
to
finger get messed up?
It got really swollen. It was really gross.
He's lucky that's all that happened. That he just got gross.
I think he was able to recognize it right away. He just went straight to the hospital. So it was able to help him.
Yeah. Here's why, everybody. Brown recluse spider bites. The toxin there necrotizes tissue. In other words, it kills it. So what starts out as a normal bite with redness builds up, and eventually the tissue starts to decay away. So it dies off. And so they have to debride it. They have to remove it. Now, how can you differentiate a brown recluse? Anybody?
You got longer legs, don't they?
Well, they're a little bit more brownish, beige. They could be brown recluses, yellow or to dark chocolate.
Yeah, because if I'm correct, I think they kind of look the same as a wolf spider, except wolf spider has like dots on the torso.
Yeah, brown recluses are also called. Violin. avalanche spider. Because if you, and the book has a picture of it, if you look at it, it looks like a violin. So the pain will start after several hours. And they have, you get a red halo and then a bullseye pattern. That's typical of brown recluse. Whereas with the black widow spider bite, it's not that bullseye shape. Black widow, it has that hourglass, red hourglass on its belly. That black one, that's the female spider. Remember what it does to its mate. What do you think they call it? The black widow. It's black and becomes a widow after mating. Talk about pressure to get a job done. You okay there, Hannah? With a black widow spider bite, what they can have is abdominal rigidity, rock hard abs, nausea, vomiting, dizziness. Black widows love dark spaces. So be very careful when reaching into, like in your garages, areas that you don't clean out often. They could lurk in there. Scorpions, they have several types of scorpions. Which ones are worse? Like the light yellow, white ones or the darker ones?
The light ones, right?
No, the other ones. The bark spider, not bark spider, bark scorpion. Those sting. Even though I have the pincers, they sting. Really the big issue with scorpion bites, scorpion stings, is they can cause hypertension. I remember a lady that got stung and she's like, yeah, we have the scorpion right here. You want to see it? No. But it will help you? No. You sure? Yeah. You don't want to take it with you? No. You save it, put it outside, take it back with you and let it go. I'm telling you, my fear is real. It is very real. Other things to cause poor coordination, incontinence, seizures, like I said, hypertension. Ticks, remember you want to remove those with the tweezers. Be very careful and pull them out. Be very careful because what can happen, and it happens a lot, is you pull it out too hard, you decapitate it, and that head stays underneath the skin. And then that causes an infection. And there are some ticks that cause things like Lyme disease. Those are deer ticks that you find in the forest. I remember being in Connecticut back in 2010, and they told us they had a path that was clear, and we couldn't deviate from that path because there were deer tick around there. And so we exposed ourselves to the potential of getting ticks on us. So I was nervous too. What else? So for the main part, when you have bites and stings, We don't need to see the object or the culprit. Expect pain. Snake bites, remember, we don't use ice. We could use ice on some others. If the pain is severe enough, you can call it ALS. They can give pain management if they're able to with their protocols. If there's any redness, what we call erythema, you want to keep track of that. Because as time goes on, that can get bigger. That means that poison is spreading. So keep an eye on it. As far as marine life, again, out here, we don't really have to worry about it. If you go out to the Gulf Coast of Texas, you might. Especially, I remember being in Corpus Christi, and I would see a lot of jellyfish. Right? I mean, I stayed, and I'm going, hopefully, knock on wood, I'll be in Corpus Christi next April. Outside the hotel, the Omni, across the street, and they had the barrier wall, hurricane barrier wall, and go down and you look, and I was seeing a buttload of jellyfish. And so the problem with jellyfish is the way you get stung is you graze their tentacles, and their tentacles have little. Think about a submarine, and how it has the silos inside. They open up and the missiles shoot out. I don't mean the torpedoes. I mean the missiles. So those missiles are spring-loaded. So when you brush by those tentacles, they're shooting out those little stingers into your skin. And they have a poison. Remember, fish, as they swim through the tentacles of a jellyfish, they get stung and they become paralyzed. And what does the jellyfish do? Well, it dissolves it, eats it up. So it hurts. Jellyfish stings hurt. So you want to neutralize the poison in the stingers. So what do? Because Gabe is the leader of the bunch, he'll gladly pee on your leg to help neutralize that poison. Right, Gabe?
Yes, sir.
Looks like nobody wants your generosity.
I just ate a couple of sticks of asparagus too, so I got you guys.
Gabe. No, ammonia helps neutralize those. Hot water too.
Yeah,
Yeah, better shot of you having
those
urine.
Def bottles I know people have been using a lot.
Mm-hmm. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about is lightning injuries. I'm not going to talk about high altitude sickness and stuff like that because we're not high enough out here. We're high enough at almost 4,000 feet where, remember, the concentration of oxygen, 21%, doesn't change. What changes is the pressure. And that's important because you will see that. I'm pretty sure you'll see that on Friday. And if not Friday, on Monday. You either see it on Friday or Monday. I'm going to tell you that right now. The concentration doesn't change. It's the pressure. Because remember, the concentration is 21%. It's the pressure. So I know, coming from sea level, when I moved here at 4,000 feet, it was a little hard to breathe for a while. I mean, I wasn't real out of breath, but I mean, I felt a little sluggish. But once I got acclimated to this altitude, it became better. Anybody move in from out of state and experience that? No military spouses or anybody experience that? Okay. The other altitude sicknesses usually happen above 7,000 feet. So again, out here, we don't have to worry about it much. It's just edema in the brain can occur. But you can get that information for your knowledge on your own from reading. But lightning injuries. Lightning is heat energy. And those lightning bolts are really hot. If you get struck by lightning, what happens is electricity follows the path of least resistance. So a person can get struck by lightning in their left shoulder and have the bolt come out of their right big toe. You could have two entries on either side of the body, or an entry and an exit on either side of the body. You might have it on the same side of the body. Just don't know. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. Here's what you really have to remember. That as it's following that path, it might come in contact with the heart. And so remember that heat energy? What is it going to do to the heart? It's going to cook it. It can damage it. Don't we need the heart to flow blood throughout the body? So if we damage the part of the heart, does this part sound a little familiar? If we damage part of the heart, what happens to that pumping action?
Decreases.
It decreases. And also, that heart has been damaged, it's been fried. Think about when you overload a circuit. Do you fry the wires? So what do you think just happened to your heart? So one of the things that you really have to be on the lookout for is the person to go into cardiac arrest because of the damage to the heart. So, gotta remember the heart. Gotta remember the path it travels. You gotta think about the path that lightning bolt took. It might kill the person, it might not. Where don't you understand? Where don't you understand? Where don't you want to stand under during a lightning storm?
Trees.
Under trees, yes. And don't want to have a golf club up in the air when that lightning comes down. If you ever saw Caddyshack. All right. Treatment, basically, it's observe for possible cardiac arrest or any type of pumping difficulty from damage to the heart. Also, and this will come into trauma, but think about the burns that the patient has suffered. So we'll talk about soft tissue injuries, how to take care of the soft tissue injuries. Okay. All right. Did you guys have fun today? Did you guys like Be My Piece of Meat?
Yes.
My ice cubes? Did those analogies help see, visualize what's happening to a person when they're suffering a cold emergency? Okay. Did you see about we kind of talked about submersion emergencies. I mean, there's the bends, there's air embolisms that occur. Nitrogen bubbles build up. As we start going down in depth, there's already nitrogen in our bloodstream. Because remember, the majority of the air is nitrogen. 79% of the air we breathe in is nitrogen. So as we start going in depth, we start building up nitrogen bubbles. And the deeper we go, the bigger they are and more are produced. So when the person is going up, those bubbles need to decrease, and they do eventually. But what they have to do, somebody that's diving, either freestyle or scuba, they go up so far, this is more scuba, and stop at a certain depth. And they kind of blow out, and they kind of wait there, chill out for a little bit. And that's giving time for the body to adjust to that new pressure, and for those nitrogen bubbles to get smaller. And they go up a little bit more, and they stop and repeat the process. Chill out, wait for the body to equalize, and the bubbles to get smaller. So eventually, they reach the top. Anybody that's been scuba diving, they're told not to go on a flight for about 3 days after the dive, because the body's already had these drastic altitude changes, or depth changes in this case. So that could be dangerous for somebody flying. Again, we kind of talked about it with the cold water emergency, and really any type of water emergency. Remember that it doesn't take very much water to drown somebody. It takes only a teaspoon. It's a normal reflex. That's why they call it. And guess what we are? Mammals. Mammalian diving reflex. Get that laryngospasm. It doesn't take a lot of water. It really doesn't. We work tirelessly to try to revive our patients. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? All right. With that said, again, I hope you did have fun. I hope you guys did learn something. And you guys have a very good night. And I'll see you on Friday.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. I'm going to start downloading the recording as soon as it's available. Put it up.